Hello, this is Zonky the Donkey, and today I'm going to be presenting to you episode 2 in my Mortar guide. We're going to be focusing on being a Mortar team squad leader. Now, I think this is one of the first times in squad, since probably vehicles came in where the metagame has changed so significantly. And that's with the advent of mortars, IEDs, and mines, that the game becomes completely different. It feels like a whole new game now. And so, before, and a lot of the Project Reality players, there was generally a support squad. And now we really do have the ability to fill that role in a meaningful way where you can still contribute heavily to the team. And one of my favorite things to play over the past few days since the 9.4 patch is to play as a mortar/logistics squad lead and essentially playing the role of the support squad. And so essentially, since there's really no way to add in or there aren't any squad locks right now, you can't just say, hey, 4 or 5 people max, because in all reality, that's really all you need is about 5 people to do a really good support squad for a couple mortar gunners, a couple logistics trucks drivers, and then yourself as the squad leader. But so you're probably going to end up with 9 people. And so really we're going to be going over today about how to effectively manage a squad that's going to be filling these logistical roles and the mortar roles, and basically to where you're not going to be a liability to your team in any way and still actively contributing. So now, as a mortar and logistics team squad lead, your bread and butter is going to be at the beginning of the round. I'm sure, as most of you have seen in a lot of really frustrating games, you've probably joined mid-round where there's one fob up that's just getting camped by vehicles, or there's no fobs up at all. And so if you are a thinking player and have the ability to tactically plan on where to put fobs and where that's going to work and properly space them, this is why you're watching this video initially. And so what I suggest to do is take control of both logistics trucks, all possible logistics trucks, and let other squad leaders know, hey, I'm running support squad. I'm gonna run your logistics. I'm gonna be your fire support, and make sure they communicate back with you that they understand that, and tell them that you're going to be taking those logistics trucks, and have them put up, where you want to put fobs, where they want to put fobs, and say, hey, go straight there. First things first, this is an Al-Basra map, for example, and I'm going to put some friendly fob markers down and say, hey, I'm going to put a fob here for my fire base. You guys put up your markers where you want to. And a lot of the times, as the squad lead in charge of logistics trucks, other people aren't going to be concerned about fobs. So sometimes you're just going to have to do that for them. So I would, anytime you want to run mortars and do support, I would just go ahead and dedicate the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. Just go ahead and planning on running logistics and building fobs. Sometimes you're going to have to build people's fobs for them because, as much as we hate to say it, there are a lot of lone wolf players in this game. They may join a squad, but they're going to do their own thing. But you need to be able to make sure those lone wolf players are in the action, because they're often going to be the difference between, victory and defeat by having a good spawn point for them to come in that's close to the action, but not too close where it's going to get captured right away. When it comes to building your fire base, there's a few key things to keep in mind. And number one is basically, how close to the action are you going to be? And is that going to put your fire base in jeopardy of being overrun? So here in Al-Basra as the insurgents, I really like to build my fire base on alleyways, because the only way to get into the alleys is by 2 bridges that you can pretty easily cover. And most of the time, Americans aren't looking to come onto alleys unless it's the actual objective. So I place it here because I know I can reach the entire map minus the far western edges, like on Village, but by the time we get to Village anyways, we probably don't need mortars all that bad anyways. So here, I place my fob, and I think I end up going and doing another logistical run here, but you got to coordinate, your couple of logistics trucks in order to get, not only your fire base set up, but the other squad's fob set up as well. And when it comes to placing your mortars, we're going to be talking about the mortar calculator that's been really popular in the subreddit lately, but it does matter where you put them. So you're always going to want to generally put them in a covered and concealed position where they're not going to be able to be seen. Yeah, that seems pretty obvious. But the other thing that may not seem as obvious is where you're placing them in relation to the grid squares. So now in the latest patch, there's sub keypad. So for example, I'm in like Golf 8 keypad 3 right now. But if you zoom in on the map, you can see that each one of those keypads is broken down into 9 further keypads from there. So I always try and place my mortars in the center of one of those sub keypads, and you'll see why shortly when we talk about using this calculator. So here we have this Mortar calculator. This is a Python-based program that one of the members of the community created. I'm going to find your name and credit you eventually. I just don't know who you are right now, but this is the most useful tool I found with the Mortar so far. And essentially how this works is this is in your selection, you're going to type 1 to start the calculator right away, and it asks you for your mortar coordinates. And so remember earlier I mentioned it matters where you place your mortars. Try and place them in the center of those sub keypads. For example, let's say we place our mortar in Foxtrot 7, keypad 6, keypad 8, keypad 7. So I think in this instant, I'm not perfectly inside of the center, but I adjusted so I can give you the exact coordinate. And think of it, if you're familiar with military or topographical maps, there's 8 and 10 digit grid coordinates that get you really, really exact. I think all the way to 10 digit gets you down to 1 meter of precision. And that's what this does. You can go down to as many sub keypads as you need to get as accurate fire as possible. And if you fuck this part up, your mortar coordinates, every single round you fire is going to miss. And so from there, you're going to hit enter, and it asks you for your target coordinates. So once you start, we'll talk about how to accept and process fire missions from, a little later on. But when it comes down to your targets, you're going to essentially do the same thing where, remember, you can break down the keypads into sub keypads further. So you're going to zoom in, you're going to see each keypad's broken down into 9. Well, you can break those down in your head into 9, basically imagine you're drawing the grid there yourself. And so let's say our target is in golf 9, keypad 5, keypad 6. We're going to hit enter, and it's going to give you your exact azimuth and elevation you set to. So whenever you're eventually going to put down an observe marker for your team, wherever the fire mission is, tell them to orient on that. It's going to give them some kind of reference point. And then make sure you tell them the elevation to set to, and read it out in this format here. Rather than saying 1,000 or rather than saying 1297, say, hey, team, set your elevation to 1297 mils. And basically ask them if they receive that message. I usually say, how copy to my guys, and I intend for them to read it back to me. That way we get an accurate marker. Now, using this tool, it's key that you know perfectly where the location is you're trying to hit. So try to physically put an observe marker, using your weapon, pointing it at that area to drop that observe marker, and you're going to see a lot better results using this. So the hardest part about being a logistics and mortar squad leader is all the multitasking that comes at hand. So here, first off, we're going to talk about prioritizing your fires. Now, mortars are obviously going to be most effective against entrenched static forces. So here, we located an enemy FOB in a intersection here at Basra, and I'm waiting for basically rounds to come in. I believe this wasn't the fire base we were operating from that my mortars were at, but they're at another one. But essentially, it's, you have to prioritize where your rounds are going to go, because when you let your other squad leaders know, they're going to call for it on everything and whatever they want. It could just be one guy around the corner. And so you need to get as much information from those other squad leads as possible before accepting a fire mission, because you don't want to waste rounds, because you essentially on a full FOB load of 1,000 ammo, that only gets you about 34 mortar shots, and it's really not that much when you think about it. So, prioritize, try and focus on the most urgent point at hand. Oftentimes, that's going to be on an attack, because you're going to be, attacking a defending force that's typically going to be more static. When you're using mortars in defense, it's a lot more complicated. You need to be in a much better observation point to do that. Not to say you can't do it, it's just more difficult than using it to support an attacking force rather than using mortars to support a defending force. Now, the other part that's so difficult about being a mortar and logi squad leader is the multitasking. And so remember, you're going to have 1 to 2 guys driving logistic trucks at all times that are not only going to have to supply your FOB, but other FOBs and new FOBs that get placed up. And so you're constantly going to have to be in communication with your drivers and making sure they're staying active, like this guy here that's just sitting waiting next to a truck for something to happen on my map right here. and you're going to have 1 to 2 guys on a mortar, and that's going to leave you with 3 to 5 other guys that are just looking for something to do. So you need to make sure they're delegated to. I generally have my guys on the defense just because they're usually going to have a more reliable spawn point. They're going to be able to rely on FOBs and not so much rally points. So, you know, kind of in conclusion, you know, you've got to multitask, prioritize fires, and keep all your guys actively engaged. There's so much you can do with the mortars in this game. It just requires some good leadership on your part to make sure the logistics for it are set, making sure you can, you know, you're not just wasting time by firing mortars into nowhere, and making sure your other squad leaders know. So if you feel like you got some, you know, valuable information out of this, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a lot more squad videos of an extensive series on squad leading in this game. You know, leave me a comment, tell you what you liked. I know a lot of people from the last video said, hey, you know, the way we were you know, dialing in mortars before wasn't that effective. And yeah, you guys are right, and I found this calculator, and that's why I released this video here today in addition to some other information. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys out in the battlefield.